On today's show, the Cavs get a win for the fourth time in their last 5 games. And most importantly in this one, Evan Mobley looked dominant. We'll talk about his big night, best game of the season he's played, and everything else from Friday's win over the Sacramento Kings on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi again, everybody. My name is Danny Cunningham, and I cover the Cleveland Cavaliers over at my Substack, The Inside Shot, and you're listening to another edition of Locked On Cavs, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in all of America. You can find this show the same place you can find any other Locked On podcast. That's Apple, that's Spotify, that is YouTube as well. If you're watching right now, please do us a favor, hit the thumbs up button for us and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, and make sure you are subscribed wherever you might be listening so that you can follow along with Locked On Cavs. And today's episode of Locked On Cavs is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDON NBA, for $20 off your first purchase. On today's show, we will talk about the dominant night that Evan Mobley had, what went wrong in the first half, because this was a game that was probably a little bit closer than it should have been, and a brief look ahead to the importance of Saturday's game against the Orlando Magic. But the Cavs beat the Kings 123-118 at Rocket Arena on Friday night. And as I mentioned, that was a game that was probably a little bit closer than it should have been. But the most important thing to come out of this was, yes, the fact that the Cavs won. Anytime winning is a good thing for this team, which is quietly, I think, because the losses have felt a little loud. They've won 4 out of their last 5 games. They've won 9 out of their past 13. Like, this is a team that's played some decent basketball lately. Maybe not the peak of what we think the Cavs can be, but some decent basketball lately. But the real story from this game is what Evan Mobley did. So Mobley had what I think is far and away the best game that he's played so far this season. He finished with 29 points, 13 rebounds, 7 assists, 4 block shots, and did not have a single turnover. It was the best game that he has played, and I think one of the best games that he has played in his entire career. And one of the things that really stood out to me was that Evan Mobley was aggressive the entire time he was on the floor. Because let's go back to Wednesday night when the Cavs played the Charlotte Hornets, and they got what was a nice win, and I think looks like a little bit of a better win now that the Hornets smoked the Orlando Magic on Thursday. But Evan Mobley had a great first half, right? Like, that was a big part of the reason why the Cavs were able to build. I think it was a 24-point lead at halftime, and they led by as many as 27 because Evan Mobley was awesome in the first half. I think he had 13 points, and, he was aggressive in seeking out his own shot. He did some really good things with the basketball in his hands. He was aggressive in getting downhill and getting to the rim. And then in the second half, he had 2 shot attempts. And just like that was, I think, a really good story of what makes Evan Mobley at times a frustrating basketball player, is that the aggressiveness he shows can sort of come and go. And he played in this game on Friday night against the Sacramento Kings. Mobley played 34 minutes and 46 seconds. And for all 34 minutes and 46 seconds, it felt like Evan Mobley was aggressive. And how many times can you go through his game log page on Basketball Reference? How many times, like this season, can you say, no matter how many minutes Evan played, how many times can you say, Evan felt like he was aggressive the entire time he was on the floor? And I'm not going to say this is the only time that has happened, because I don't believe that to be true. Like, there have been other games where he's been aggressive most, if not all, the time he's played. But this was at a different level. In this game, Evan had 24 field goal attempts. That is awesome. Now, are there a couple of those that you could look at and say, I don't know that that was the best shot? Sure, I think you could do that, but who cares? I think Evan taking 24 field goal attempts, which is an outlier number. It's the most field goal attempts he's had in a game this year. It's 5 more than the previous high. He has not had a game prior to Friday night. He had not had a game in which he had 20 field goal attempts. Previous high was 19, which had been done a couple of times. But like that, I would rather see him take 24 shots and have some of those be ones who's like, you know what? I don't know that you needed to take that shot. I don't know that that shot made sense. I'm not positive that was the right play there, as opposed to what we have seen at times where Evan will finish a game with 10 shots or Evan will finish a game with 12 shots. And you're just left wanting to see more because you know the talent is there, because you know the ability is there. Like, that's never been the question. The question, I think, more so has been about the mentality of Evan Mobley and about the aggressiveness that wavers at times. Like, those things have not been there consistently. But when you see it consistently for a full night, this is what it looks like. Evan Mobley in this game was so dominant that Kenny Atkinson, after the game, said it felt like he was watching Shaq. Now, that might be a little bit overboard, I think. I think that is a coach that is heaping praise on a guy that very much deserves it. I don't know that I would quite go as far as to say it looked like I was watching prime Shaq out there, but this was who Evan Mobley needs to be more consistently. And right now, given the current health situation of the Cavs, where they don't have Darius Garland, where they don't have Sam Merrill, where they don't have Max Strus, and they are a team right now that is thin, and they're putting out some lineups that just don't work, and they need to be dependent on Evan Mobley in order for this team to not even reach its full potential. Like, they need that down the line, but in the present moment, they need Evan to be closer to this guy just to keep their heads above water more frequently than not. Like, this is a game against a bad Sacramento Kings team. Have the Kings been playing better basketball as of late? Yeah, they went on a 4-game winning streak earlier this month. That's great for them. Like, this is not a good Sacramento Kings team, although they are better, I think, when they have Domantas Sabonis as opposed to when they don't, because he missed like 6 weeks of this season. And that's part of the reason why the record is what the record is. But overall, I look at this and just say, if the Cavs get this type of play from Evan Mobley frequently, they're going to be so much better off for it. And I think that you do have to be willing to live with some growing pains, because as we know, development is not a linear path. Like, Evan Mobley is not just going to keep climbing like that. There are going to be ups and downs. It's going to, there are going to be peaks and valleys. Now, you hope that the next valley is a little bit higher than the previous valley. And you hope that the next peak that Evan hits is higher than the peak that he's currently hit. Those things can be true, but the Cavs need to see more nights like this, even when the results aren't there. If Evan would have finished this game instead of 29, 13, and 7, and originally he had 8 assists and they took an assist away, let's say he would have finished with 21 points, but took 24 shots. That still, I think, would have been a good game for Evan. Would it have been the most efficient game? No. And do the Cavs win? I'm not so sure. But the fact that he would have kept up that aggressiveness, to me, is the most positive sign. Like, the results are what the results are. But if the Cavs can get Evan Mobley to be this aggressive more frequently, they're going to be so much better off for it. They're going to be a team that is capable of getting to higher heights. And I understand the Sacramento Kings are not a good defensive team, and they don't have a big that is capable of stopping Evan when he plays this way. But there are other teams that are like this. How many bigs in the NBA do you look at and just say, yeah, you know what? I don't trust Evan against that guy, because I think it's so much less about who Evan is playing as compared to how Evan is playing. And I have said this about the Cavs a lot this year, because I don't think a lot of who the Cavs are right now has to do with who they have played. Their record says so much more about them. Like, this game against the Kings, and I've said this about, I don't even know how many games. This game was about the Cavs. It was not about the opponent. And I think that is more true for Evan Mobley than anybody else on the roster. It's about the mindset Evan plays with. It's about the tenacity, the aggressiveness, the forcefulness that Evan Mobley plays with, not necessarily who Evan Mobley played against. Because there are a lot of times where we will see opponents. I think the Charlotte Hornets were a good example of this. Do the Hornets have somebody, and they have a couple of nice bigs, like Ryan Kalkbrenner is going to be a good player. Moussa Diabate is going to be a good player. Like, they have a couple of young, promising bigs. No one on that roster is capable of stopping Evan Mobley when he plays the way that he played on Friday night. And there are a lot of teams you can look up and down the league and say that. And I think that's true. Like, Saturday night's game, the Orlando Magic do not have a big man that is capable of stopping Evan Mobley if he plays with this mentality, with this aggressiveness, with this forcefulness. They don't have that. And there are a lot of teams that fall into that category. But now the next step is about getting this out of Evan Mobley more frequently, They need Evan to be this guy on a much more consistent basis. It's not going to be an every night thing. We shouldn't expect Evan Mobley all of a sudden to average the numbers that he posted on Friday. That's not a fair expectation, and that's not going to happen right now. But this was Friday night's game was a glimpse into who Evan Mobley should be on his way to becoming. And that's why I think it's so exciting. That's why I think this game, despite the fact that was this an underwhelming win? Sure. But the fact that Evan showed what Evan showed in this game was awesome. The playmaking, I think, has really taken a step forward. Defensively, like, he was fantastic, and he has been so good on that end of the floor, and he's not getting the credit for it because the Cavs have not been as good defensively as they should be. But he is just, this game from him was maybe the most complete game that he's played in his career. And I know we can look back at last year's game against the Hornets where he had 41 points, but part of that was he hit 6 3-pointers in that game. He didn't hit a single three in this game. And like, is there a conversation we had at a certain point about his shooting not being great right now? He was 0-4 from 3 in this game. His 3-point percentage has really gone down. Sure. But I would take nights like this and have to deal with that. Like, that's a fair trade-off, I think, if you're the Cavs. I think you're very happy with the way that Evan played in this game. And I think that a lot went right for him. And you have to hope that this is something like last year, to get back to that Hornets game. That was very clearly a light bulb moment for Evan, where you could see, oh, I'm capable of this. And I think the hope for the Cavs should be that this game against the Kings on Friday night is another one of those light bulb moments. And you watch Evan take off, because right now the Cavs need him. The Cavs need him to be this guy. Again, is the stat line always going to be this? No. And it doesn't need to always be this. But the aggressiveness and the forcefulness, those things that he had going on Friday night, those need to be the things that don't waver, because the stat line is going to change, right? I mean, but the effort, the forcefulness, the aggressiveness can't, because that was some of the best stuff that we've seen from Evan Mobley. And that is who Evan Mobley can be moving forward. Now, as I mentioned, this game was probably closer than it should have been. And I want to talk about why that was the case, because in the first half, Cavs didn't really have interest in playing defense. And there were some things in the second half that even then could have been much better. We'll dive into those things next right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show is brought to you by Game Time. During basketball season, there's nothing like being in the building. The energy, the crowd, that first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those big moments. They don't want to be stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. And that is where Game Time comes in, because the Game Time app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets fast, simple, and without the guesswork. Browsing the Game Time app, straightforward and simple. Finding tickets takes just a few taps, and you can see the view from your seat before buying, and that can make choosing tickets easy, and you can be confident where you're going to sit. Like, if you want to go on Monday night when the Cavs are back at home taking on the Orlando Magic, and you want to say, hey, I want a really good view of the Cavs bench, you can click on any seat inside Rocket Arena, and it will show you exactly what your view of the floor is going to look like. And then obviously, what the bench view is going to look like from there. Game Time has that feature. It's one of the best things going on. They also include the fees up front, so you're not going to be surprised at the very last minute because the price changes, because it doesn't change with Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account with Game Time. Use code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you again for making today's edition of Locked On Cavs your first listen. And thank you to those of you that help to make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. And if you haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer Club, because it gives you access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Cavs that's compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app, plus an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. A link is in the show description, both on YouTube or wherever else you might be getting your podcast, if you would like to learn more. And this was a game that shouldn't have been as close as it was. Like, the Cavs started off this game on a 16-2 run. They dominated the first 3.5 minutes. And I was sitting in my seat thinking, oh, the Cavs are going to make this easy. the Cavs are just going to roll over a Kings team that isn't very good, that have a lot of big names that just, quite frankly, aren't very good at basketball anymore. And then Doug Christie subbed out his entire starting five less than 4 minutes into the game. That's an old school coach move, I think, that I've not seen in quite some time. And it worked because the Cavs and Kings were tied at 35 apiece at the end of the first quarter after the Cavs had previously led by 14 points, which to me was just like the Cavs stopped playing defense. What they did, the final 6 minutes really of that quarter was just atrocious stuff. Like they were not nearly good enough on that end of the floor. And it really allowed the Kings to find a rhythm and start playing basketball well. And as we have seen so many times, they started to light it up from three. Like the Kings were, I believe, 9 of 15 from beyond the arc at halftime, which if you read what I wrote over at the Inside Shot earlier this week about luck versus bad defense, like this was, some of them were unlucky. Like Russell Westbrook hit, a few 3-pointers in this game. And he was ultimately 3 of 10 because he missed his last few, but like those are shots sometimes you're going to live with, and he was making them. And that's a tough place to be. Some of them were tightly guarded. Some of them were just really poor defense. Like there was a 3-pointer that I believe Malik Monk hit, and he hit 4 of them. And I would think of as the best shooter from beyond the arc on the Kings. In the right corner where he was open for 4 or 5 seconds, and DeAndre Hunter was who he was supposed to be defending, and DeAndre Hunter was just lost defensively. And there were far too many possessions like that in the first half. Now, to Cleveland's credit, I thought they played so much better defensively in the second half. To allow the Kings to score 71 points in the first half and then hold them to 47 points in the second half really shows me that, yes, they are capable of playing defense at that level. It's just not a thing that they chose to do in the first half, right? Like I thought because the Cavs got such an early lead, such a big early lead, I thought, oh man, like it kind of seemed like they thought this was going to come easy to them. And on the defensive end of the floor, it didn't. Offensively, like they didn't have a good fourth quarter. And I think part of that was on some of the lineups that were out there in the fourth quarter. But offensively, for the most part, like Evan was awesome. Donovan was good. He had 33 points on 25 shots, like not his most efficient night, but he had a good game. They didn't struggle on that end of the floor for the most part. They didn't necessarily shoot the ball awesome from beyond the arc, but I did think for the most part, like their offense was something to be fine with. But defensively, they need to string together a better 48-minute effort. And on Saturday when they play the Magic, like they need to be much better than they were. And I do look at some of the lineups that the Cavs are trotting out there right now. And part of me thinks, you know what, they could be doing these things differently. And then part of me looks at the available players right now, and it's hard for me to fault Kenny Atkinson with some of this stuff. Like the Cavs right now are counting on guys that they should not be having to count on. Like Naquan Tomlin, who I thought did not have a very good game whatsoever. He was a minus 27 in 15 minutes. The Cavs defensive rating with him on the floor on Friday night was like 167. It was terrible. It's not all Naquan Tomlin's fault. Like, did he play well? No, but it's not necessarily all his fault that it went that way. But I do think that there are certain groupings that the Cavs, I would like to see them be smarter with, but also they only have so many available bodies. Like they really do miss Darius Garland on both ends of the floor. They miss Sam Merrill unquestionably on both ends of the floor. And I think that because both Sam and Max are out at the same time right now, as has been the case anytime Sam has missed games this year, they really like that absence is magnified because those guys, I don't know, are necessarily interchangeable, but they are the closest replicas to each other on the roster, and they don't have a third guy that's like that. Maybe Tyrese Proctor grows into that at some point, but he's not there right now. So I do think that because of that, like though the absence is magnified, if that makes sense. But one of the pairings that I look at, and it did not go well at all on Friday, is DeAndre Hunter and Naquan Tomlin. And DeAndre was, I thought, really bad in the first half. In the second half, I thought he played solid. I didn't think it was great, but it was much better than what he was in the first half. And that's on both ends of the floor. I thought defensively in the first half, he was atrocious. Thought he was better in the second half. But those two, when they're on the floor together, like the Cavs have a slight positive net rating, according to Data Baller, when both DeAndre and Naquan share the floor. But the Cavs have a defensive rating of 119.7 when those two are on the floor together. And part of that is I don't think either of them are very good off-ball defenders right now. Like the biggest frustration I think that a lot of people have defensively with DeAndre is that he is not a very good off-ball defender. He has been, I think, a good on-ball defender so far this year. Like he has done a good job in isolation. He's made plays there when a second guy is brought into the action. Like he's not been a good pick and roll defender, and he's not been a good defender against cutters. And I don't think Naquan is a very good defender against cutters. I think that he can get caught ball watching at times too. And I think that opposing offenses have really been able to take advantage of that. And I thought that's a big part of the reason why the Kings were able to make runs in this game. And then you look at offensively, like Naquan has really struggled with his shot as of late. Like he's not been making threes, and he was 0 of 1 tonight. He was 2 of 4 from the floor. So again, this is not all on him. And I don't want to be picking on a guy that's on a 2-way contract that has been an incredible success story and really like has been a bright spot for the Cavs so far. But teams are, I guess the best way to say this is I asked Kenny Atkinson, this is actually funny. Prior to the game, I asked him about the Cavs turnovers because until the end of 2025, the Cavs were averaging around 14 turnovers a game, which is a fine number. And since the calendar flipped to January prior to Friday night's game, the Cavs were averaging over 17 turnovers a game. So like that is an alarming increase in turnovers per game. And then naturally, because I ask about it, they have 7 total turnovers in the game against the Kings. But Kenny answered that question as saying, like, when the Cavs don't have space, which in the past few games without Darius, without Sam, like the spacing really goes away because when you're playing like Craig Porter Jr., for as good as he's been at times, he's not a guy that provides space. Naquan Tomlin does not provide space. DeAndre Hunter is shooting so poorly that he's not a guy that is providing space. Larry Nance Jr., who I thought did good things both on Wednesday against the Hornets and again on Friday against the Kings, not a space provider. Jalen Tyson is starting to get there, but just like the Cavs don't have guys right now that are space providers, and that's led to some of their turnovers. And I just do think that as of lately, and I'll have to go look at the numbers, and I'm interested to see this, and I'm going to do this probably prior to Monday's show. I am really interested to see what the offensive numbers with Naquan Tomlin look like over the past 2 weeks. Because earlier in the season, like I thought he was doing a great job of cutting, but now that he is somebody that has sort of made his way into scouting reports, I do think that that has slowed down the Cavs offensively. And maybe I'm wrong, but I do think that's one of the things that I look at and just say, I think that they need to re-examine some of the pairings that he's part of, because it did feel like he had a bad game. It didn't feel like he was as bad as the numbers would indicate that he was, but I do look at this and just say this game should not have been as close as it was. A big part of it was that really nobody outside of, I guess, Craig Porter Jr. had an okay game, and I thought Larry Nance Jr. was good. Nobody outside of those two on the bench really was helpful. The starters were awesome in this game. Like Dean Wade played 28 minutes. He had 6 points and 5 rebounds, but like he was really good. He was a plus 21. It felt like it. And it to me, too, felt like this game got closer in the fourth quarter than it should have been because Kenny Atkinson stuck with Naquan Tomlin a little bit too long. And then you saw him sub the starting 5 back in with, I think it was 4 minutes and 39 seconds. And the Cavs went through a little bit of an offensive hole. Like Donovan Mitchell missed a couple of shots that he should have made. And Evan Mobley missed a couple of shots that he should have made. But that kind of could have made this game a bigger margin of victory than it was. But once they went back to the starters, like, okay, they're fine. So part of this is they have guys in elevated roles that are like just in places where they maybe shouldn't be. But part of it too is maybe some of these lineups need to be re-examined just a little bit. Now the Cavs are back in action on Saturday. They take on the Orlando Magic. I want to look at that game just a little bit and why I think the most important thing is stacking what happened on Friday. I'll tell you what that means next right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame. It's a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern Time have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new. Boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing couldn't be better. It's right before the games, right before the weekend starts. It adds just a little bit of extra energy to your Friday night basketball viewing experience without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thank you again for making today's edition of Locked on Cavs your first listen or watch on YouTube. If you're watching right now, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up button for us and hit the notification bell and make sure you are subscribed wherever you might be consuming Locked on Cavs. And the Cavs are back in action on Saturday night in Orlando against the Magic. It is obviously the second game of a back-to-back for the Cavs. It is the first back-to-back the Cavs have had in a little over a month. I think their last back-to-back was December 22nd and 23rd against the Charlotte Hornets and the New Orleans Pelicans. The Cavs won both of those games. And they will look to do the same as they take on the Magic for the first of two straight matchups, because then Orlando comes back to Cleveland for a game on Monday evening inside Rocket Arena. And I think the most important thing to watch for in Saturday's game is, do we see the same type of forcefulness from Evan Mobley? Because Kenny Atkinson in the past has said Evan is a really good bounce back player. He is somebody that when things go wrong, like you feel very sure that the next time out, Evan is going to rectify it. And I don't want to say things went wrong on Wednesday, because that just wouldn't be true. Like, I do still look at that as a good win for the Cavs. But Evan only had 2 shots in the second half. And one of the things that I was really interested in seeing was how many shot attempts Evan was going to have in the second half of this game. And he took 10. Like, that to me was one of the best signs. Now, can Evan follow this game up? And I'm not saying that he needs to go out there and put up the exact same stat line that he had, but can Evan follow this game up with a forceful effort, an aggressive effort? Can he be, however many minutes he plays, can he play all of them aggressively? Because in the same way I feel about the Kings not having anybody to stop Evan Mobley, I don't think the Magic have anybody that's truly capable of stopping Evan Mobley. If Evan puts his mind to it, he can go out there and have another great game. And that to me is the number one thing that I'm most interested in. I'm also interested to see what type of energy the Cavs are going to have in this game. Obviously, like, Cleveland to Orlando is a tough back-to-back. The Cavs are, as I record this right now, they're currently scheduled to arrive in Orlando at 1:40 or at 2:20 in the morning. So by the time they get back to their hotel, like, it's going to be 3:00 in the morning before anybody gets to sleep on the Cavs. This is a tough travel back-to-back. The last time they had a Florida-Cleveland back-to-back was Miami earlier this year, and then they lost to Toronto the next night. Now, the game against Miami, they did not play Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley. They won that game with the bench group. That was a really, really impressive win at that point. We don't know who's available for the Cavs. I don't think they're sitting anyone. I think they're trying to really get on a run here. And as I said earlier in the show, they've won 4 to 5. They've won 9 out of 13. Like, they have been climbing up the standings. They're currently, I believe, in 5th, and they're just a game and a half behind the Toronto Raptors, which is like steps in the right direction. I think it's okay to feel good about this team, even if it's not always pretty right now. Now, if they look like this when they get healthy, I think that's a different conversation. But I do think the most important thing for the Cavs right now is just find ways to win basketball games. They are 6 games above 500 for the first time this season. This is their high water mark of the season. And we will see on Saturday night if they can make it 7 games above 500 and 5 wins in 6 games and 10 wins in 14 games. Like, those are good signs. Now, as far as Orlando goes, Franz Wagner is out. He's got an ankle injury, did not play against Charlotte, not going to play in this one. Jalen Suggs is listed as probable. He has not played, I believe, since January 2nd. So he's missed about 3 weeks with a I believe an MCL contusion is what it's been termed as. We'll see. I would imagine that he plays. We'll see what he looks like. I imagine that he will be on a minutes restriction as well. But that's a big game for the Cavs. These two games against Orlando coming up are big games. If they find a way to sweep this series the way they swept the series against the Sixers, then I think we will feel really, really good about the Cavs as they then have one more game before they head out west and hopefully get healthier while they are out west on their 5-game, 11-day West Coast road trip that is very, very quickly approaching. Well, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Cavs. I appreciate you hanging out with me right here at Locked On Cavs. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button for me and click the notification bell so you don't miss anything from us here. And no matter where you are listening or watching, please make sure you are subscribed so that you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. And I will be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.